Hi, it's Monty from Sportive Cyclist, the mammal channel, and in this video I am going to be comparing the Garmin Edge 530 with the Wahoo ELEMNT BOLT. What are the differences? What should you think about when choosing between buying either of these two bike GPSs? Just some general shit. So rules of engagement time. This video isn't intended to be entirely comprehensive or else it would last for hours. Clearly there are countless differences and considerations when choosing between these two bike computers. I have done a detailed review of the ELEMNT BOLT at the bottom here, and I plan to do a full review of the Edge 530 in time. I'll link to both as and when they're available in the description below this video. Right, let's get into the video. Now, where in the range do these two bike computers sit? Well, the ELEMNT BOLT, that one is easy. There are only two bike computers in the Wahoo ELEMNT range. You've got the Roam, which is at the top, and you've got the Bolt, which is, I guess, at the bottom, second. In the Garmin range, the Edge 530 is slightly more complicated. It's pretty much in the middle, the first entry level, if you like, pro bike computer in their range. That said, I'm sure the cheaper ones would more than do the job as well. Both of them are what you would consider mid-level bike computers. Now, both of these bike computers have been on the market for some time as I make this video in early 2021. The ELEMNT BOLT was released in March 2017. The Edge 530 was launched, I think, in April 2019. But despite being around for a while, both of these computers are kept up to date with firmware updates, additional software features as and when they're released. Indeed, both of these have received firmware updates in the last month or so. So whilst both bike computers have been around for some time, it's clear that Wahoo and Garmin consider them both to be current models that they keep up to date. A word on price before we get too far into this video. The Garmin Edge 530 does cost more than the Wahoo ELEMNT BOLT. Garmin is selling the Edge 530 for $300, £245, whilst the Wahoo ELEMNT BOLT will set you back $230, £185. The difference in price is approximately $70, £60, and I guess it's up to you as to whether the additional feature set on the Edge 530 is worth it from a value perspective. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so look and feel will come down to personal preference, and I haven't really picked the right day, the right lighting conditions in which to show this, but let me give you a look now. Now, to me, both bike computers look pretty well made. They look like premium quality devices. My Bolt is grey-ish colour, whereas I think the newer ones are black. The Garmin Edge 530 is black. The Bolt has these buttons on the top. Garmin only has buttons at the side and at the front. I do actually quite like these buttons on the top because you can press on them very easily when the computer is on the handlebars and it doesn't move around, whereas sometimes when you're pressing these side buttons you're required to squeeze. For choice, I really like the functionality of these buttons here. If you're used to using bike computers with buttons on the side, I don't think you're going to have a particular problem with the Edge 530. Now, before I get on and put the bike computers on my bike handlebars, a quick word about weight. The short answer is that there is not much between them. The weight differential is 13 grams, which is half a packet of crisps. Once you've got down to 4% body fat, you come and talk to me about 13 grams of weight differential. So Wahoo claims the ELEMNT BOLT is particularly aerodynamic. The back here integrates with its aero out front mount down here. You see that out front there. Now, the Garmin, for reasons of handlebar real estate, or the lack thereof, is going in a standard Garmin handlebar mount, but the 530 also comes with an out front mount should you want it. Whilst I'm attaching the bike computer to the bike, I may as well say a few words about data sensors. Essentially, there's nothing to choose between the Edge 530 and the ELEMNT BOLT in terms of data sensors. Both of them now connect both to ANT+ and Bluetooth sensors. So right now I've got my Bluetooth strap on here. This is a Wahoo one. I've got some Brighton ANT+ cadence speed sensors on the bike, and in terms of other slightly more esoteric sensors, I'm about to attach this Garmin Varia radar and bike light to the back, and again both bike computers integrate with that. Speaking to the broader suite of more sophisticated hardware integrations, both bike computers will communicate with and interpret the data that comes out of your power meter. Both bike computers will communicate with electronic gear shifting systems, your Shimano Di2s and the like. And importantly for people who like their indoor training, both the Edge 530 and the Element Bolt will communicate with and control smart trainers using the ANT+ FEC protocol. So if you're looking at choosing between these two bike computers, unless you have something particularly esoteric, and you'll need to check the websites of each respective manufacturer for this, I'd say there's not much in it in terms of how the bike computers integrate with other pieces of hardware both on and off the bike. So it's a tie, essentially. I'll say a few more words about navigation later on in this video, but for now, let's pick a route on both bike computers and let's get started riding. Let's go. In terms of your basic bike GPS functionality, I'd say there isn't anything to choose between the Edge 530 and the Element Bolt. They're both at a price point and level of sophistication that you wouldn't anticipate there to be any problems in terms of the recording accuracy. They both seem to display the data that's coming off the bike sensors, off my heart rate strap, and interpreting it correctly. In terms of GPS accuracy, again, I don't have the means in which to compare precisely. I'm recording this ride now on both bike computers. I've done that a couple of times, and when I've compared the data on Strava, I can't really see much. And for your normal road cyclist, such as myself, probably like you, I don't think the differences in accuracy are sufficient on bike computers of this quality for you to use that as a reason for choosing between the two devices. Both the Element Bolt and the Edge 530 have route following and navigation functionality, but it does highlight one key difference in that the Edge has full onboard navigation. It knows where you are, it has maps loaded onto the device with road names and functions a bit more like you would expect a standard car GPS, i.e. if you go off course, then on the device itself it can calculate and reroute you back to your course. Now the Element Bolt does not have that capability, so if you go off course it will tell you you've gone off course, and in fact it will flash on the LED strip at the top red, but it won't on the device itself navigate you back to your route. That's because with the Element Bolt, when you upload a route, all you are doing is uploading a sequence of GPS waypoints which it is plotting on a map. It doesn't know, inverted commas, that you are following particular roads, and therefore is not in a position to reroute you along different roads should you go wrong. Now Wahoo does present you with an alternative solution. You can use the Element app in order to reroute yourself and upload that revised route to the device and follow that, but clearly that's not as good as the Edge. The related aspect of this, if you are uploading Strava routes to either of these two devices, if you upload a Strava route to the Element Bolt, which is very easy, because Strava routes don't natively have turn-by-turn directions, turn-by-turn directions won't show on your Element Bolt. Alternatively, if you upload a Strava route to the Edge 530, again the route natively doesn't contain the turn-by-turn data, but because you've uploaded it to the Edge 530, which has onboard navigation, when that route is transmogrified through the machine, it essentially calculates a series of turn-by-turn directions which will show up on the map. Now to be clear, the Element Bolt does have turn-by-turn functionality, so for instance if I create a ride with GPS route which contains the turn-by-turn data, the instructions, when I use that route on an Element Bolt, the turn-by-turn directions show up, and indeed they're very clear, easy to follow. To confirm, if you're uploading a Strava route to an Element Bolt, you won't have turn-by-turn directions. Long section on navigation, but the headline message is if you are after full onboard navigation capability, then the Edge 530 beats the Element Bolt. Now if you're finding this video useful, if you are enjoying it, then please do remember to bloop nay smash the like button. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, helps more people find this video, my channel, and I would really appreciate it. Back to the video. Whilst we're talking about navigation, we can cover off a few more differences between the two devices. So starting with mapping, the Edge 530 has more detailed maps. We can see there's a bit more detail being shown on the map versus the Wahoo. And another observation is that the Edge 530 appears to be slightly more powerful in terms of its computing oomph. It zooms in and zooms out more quickly on the map here, which is where you see it most notably. And when it's calculating a route, it certainly has no problems in doing so quickly. Now, whilst we're also here looking at the screen, it won't have escaped your notice that the Edge 530 has a colour screen, whereas the Bolt has a monochrome screen. And indeed, the Edge 530 is a bigger screen than the Bolt here. I think this is a 2.6 inch screen, this is a 2.2 inch screen, and therefore with it having a little bit more screen real estate, it can show you more information. Now, I don't think actually the Element Bolt, this counts against it particularly, because the definition of what it does show, it's a high contrast screen. It's actually very easy to view, particularly in direct sunlight. Now, the resolution of the Garmin Edge 530 screen is better. It does have the ability to show more definition, but actually it's not quite as, I don't know if the term is right, contrasty as the Element Bolt. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you want a slightly bigger colour screen, then you're obviously going to want to pick the Garmin Edge 530, but if you can manage with that smaller grayscale screen, then the Bolt will do a fine job as a bike computer. Also, while we're here talking about the screens and moving around the devices, it won't have escaped your notice that both of these bike computers are not touchscreen, so you need to use the buttons in order to navigate around them, which does make zooming in, zooming out slightly more fiddly. I've mentioned already before that the 3 buttons on top of the Wahoo Element Bolt I particularly like because they're easy to access, whereas sometimes, particularly the ones on the front of the Edge 530 here, can be a little bit difficult, a strange angle to access when you're on a ride. To be honest, button choice is probably not the main thing that you're going to think about when picking between these two devices. We talked earlier on about hardware integrations. What about software? Well, it's a similar story really. The Edge 530 and the Element Bolt will connect to all of the main cycling software apps, whether that's your ride recording stuff like Strava or your training platforms like Training Peaks. So unless you have something particularly esoteric, this isn't a criteria to choose between the two devices. Talking of apps, both the Element Bolt and the Edge 530 have their respective smartphone apps. Wahoo has the Element app, Garmin has its Connect app. The point I'd make about the apps is that the philosophy of them is slightly different. Garmin Connect is more of a training ecosystem. It's got social features, it's got challenges, it's got a timeline. You can connect with other Garmin Connect users. The Element app, whilst it does have something of a timeline, it's more an app that helps you get the most out of your Element Bolt. The Element Bolt is very much integrated with its app. You can use it in order to create routes, sync them up to your Element Bolt. You can use it in order to change all of the settings on the device. So in summary, both apps are fine, they both work, they're both stable. It's not really something upon which I would make a buying decision between these two bike computers. Now, one differentiating factor between the Edge 530 and the Element Bolt is that the Edge does have more native software features, whether that's the Climb Pro feature, which marks gradients on rides, on climbs as you're riding up them, or you've got your pedal dynamics, your cycling dynamics, and a raft of other Garmin specific software features. The Element Bolt is a lot more simple, a lot more straightforward, much more limited in terms of additional software whiz-bangery. Importantly, it does have Strava live segments, so it does integrate properly with Strava. That's when you're riding on a segment and you're able to see what the current segment record is, and you're able to see how well you're doing against your own personal record. Both the Element Bolt and the Edge 530 have that feature. In addition, Garmin has its Connect IQ third-party app platform where third-party software developers can develop mini apps. For instance, before Strava routes became natively syncable with modern Edge devices, devices, there was a Connect IQ app that would allow you to do that. For me, I don't use a lot of those slightly esoteric little functions that Connect IQ may offer. If you want a raft of sophisticated software features, both natively on the bike computer device and also this wider ecosystem, then possibly that would point you towards the Edge 530 over the Element Bolt. All of which brings us on to usability. Now for me, the Element Bolt is easier to use than the Garmin Edge 530. Now partly that's because the Edge 530 has so many features, so many things that you can do with it, whereas the Element Bolt has a slightly more condensed set of features, and partly because the Edge 530, everything that you can do on the device itself using the buttons and the various nested menu options. Now Wahoo have taken a slightly different tack. Not everything that you can do on the device can be done on the device itself. It relies on using the Wahoo Element app alongside it, which isn't going to suit everyone, but it does mean when you're on the Bolt device itself, it's very clear what you can do and what you can change. The things that you can do on the smartphone app are generally easier, more intuitive, because the screen on your smartphone is larger and people are generally more used to the different motions, menus, and so the app and the device working together overall makes the whole experience very clean, very smooth, and everything just works. That's not to say that the Edge 530 is particularly difficult to use. Generally, with a bit of playing around with the different buttons, investigating the different menus, you can work out how to change all of the settings, how to do everything that you need to do with some ease. It just takes a little bit more time to get used to. Battery life, everyone wants to know about battery life. I don't know if it's just me, but I don't get overly excited about different battery lives, but for what it's worth, the Element Bolt is stated as having 15 hours worth of battery life on a single charge, and the Edge 530, Garmin says, will last up to 20 hours. Both of those will depend to a degree on what brightness settings you might have and how many satellites you might be following. Point of note, the Edge 530 does work with the external Garmin battery pack, which adds extra hours overall if you're participating on some sort of endurance event, and I think it's quite nifty how the connection works. In fact, I can show you. So it connects via these contacts on the bottom of the device where it connects into the out front mount, and I think you would have the battery pack underneath, this on the top, and the Edge would connect and have all that extra juice. So I don't have the means of accurately comparing battery life between the two devices. I would say that I haven't particularly noticed either device running down very quickly. They both go multiple rides between charges, so it's not something I personally would use to select between the two devices. That said, because you have the ability with the Edge 530 to connect to the external power pack, then if you're doing longer events and you definitely want to make sure that you have that extra battery capacity, then probably the Edge is the choice. Otherwise, it's not something to base your buying decision on. So the big question then, the Edge 530 and the Wahoo Element Bolt. Which is the better bike computer? And most importantly, which one should you buy? Well, unfortunately, there's no simple answer to that one. There's a few obvious use cases where you choose one over the other. If you're after a colour device, then clearly the Edge is the one for you. Equally, if navigation is the most important aspect of your GPS bike purchasing decision, then the Edge 530 with its onboard rerouting and generally more sophisticated navigation features is probably the one for you. On the other hand, if price is a key consideration, then the Element Bolt costs less money. For everyone else, I think the decision is more difficult. I bought my Wahoo Element Bolt back in 2017. At the same time, I bought the Garmin Edge 520, which is the previous version of this bike computer. Having tested both of them, I stuck with the Wahoo Element Bolt, did everything I needed, and I preferred the Wahoo Element ecosystem. The only reason I bought the Edge 530 towards the end of 2020 was to test it in comparison with other bike computers. Now, having tested it, I've thoroughly enjoyed using the Edge 530, and I think the decision between the two bike computers now is a lot harder. For ease of use and having a nice clean interface, then I'd recommend the Element Bolt, particularly if you don't mind using it in tandem with the app. If you're more excited by having lots of software features and you want to control every aspect of the device on the device, or if you're already in the Garmin ecosystem and you wish to stay there, then clearly the Edge 530 might be a better choice. You'll accept my apologies for staying firmly on the fence on this one, but they are both very good mid-range bike GPS devices. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, then please do remember to give it a big thumbs up, because that helps the YouTube algorithm. If you want to see my full detailed review of the Wahoo ELEMNT BOLT, then click up there. And if you want to see my review of the Garmin Edge 530 when I release it, I will put a link there. I've been Monty, this is Sportive Cyclist, the mammal channel. I'll see you in the next video.
Whatevers.